Okay, so let's talk about the impact. Since we have you, you wrote an article, and your article was called U.S. Sequestration Cuts Will Harm Black and Latinos. Was
Yes,
that okay?
yeah, right, right, and that's because of the way the data skews in terms of the women and children who are eligible and take advantage of the WIC program. So to give you, I guess, a rough cut look, let's just say the Latino population in the WIC program as it's currently structured, about 38% of the infants are Latinos, 39% of the women, and altogether, I think about 45% of the children in WIC are Latino women and children. 45% of the children are Latino. So there's a snapshot, if you will, of what this will mean to pregnant mothers, nursing mothers, and to infants and children. And the program goes all the way up to young children, I think up to age 5.
Okay, so Khalil, let me hang with us and let me get some feedback from Mary McMillan, who's sitting here with me, representing San Mateo County. You have heard Imara talking about in the government, this is where some Congress members wanted us to end up, and you've just now heard Khalil talking about who's going to get the brunt of the cut. So what does it look like in terms of the county?
Well, we took an initial read of it, and again, it hasn't come to fruition in the county yet, in that most of these reductions won't even begin until March. But in this year, next month, the end of this month, money will actually we'll actually see it the end of some of the funding for some of these programs.
And what programs are we talking about
month.
at the end of March?
Yes, it'll. I think we'll start seeing some of the effects, and as your guests are remarking, that many of them will be the low income and many vulnerable populations. Senior services, Meals on Wheels, Section 8 housing, I think child care funding, stage 2 under CalWORKS in this state, child welfare services will see reductions, public health services, provided for infectious disease, different kinds of prevention programs. Those will be hit. Mental health services will see a reduction. So I'm not sure that the characterization will be disproportionately to one population or another, but I would say that at least in our first slice at it, it will be vulnerable populations, to be sure.
Okay, Imara, I hope you can hear what we're talking about. Are you there with us?
Yes.
Okay, and did you hear Mary McMillan talking about what's going to be going on in San Mateo County?
Yes.
So why do you think, you said this is where some Congress members wanted us to end up. Why?
Because they believe that the government is involved in activities that they don't believe that the government should be involved in. They have a fundamental ideological sort of allergic reaction to the government straying from what they believe are its core functions centered on defense and foreign policy. And so these are the same members that, 3 weeks ago, recently voted down the Sandy relief bill because they don't believe that the government should be involved in providing emergency relief during natural disasters. It's not a core function in their view. And so all of the things that the government does that provides economic opportunity to people and helps to make our economy work better and fairer are things that they don't believe that the government should be doing anyway. And so they are more than content to see those lapse, and even some parts of the defense establishment and functions that they don't believe that we should be involved in. And so this is one of the reasons why, as I said, sequestration was passed not once but twice by the Congress, was pushed for by the House Republicans. Many people thought that these cuts would be so odious that the Congress would walk itself back. But as I say, it didn't, because a significant number of the House caucus that has control does not believe that all of the things that everyone else has been talked about, WIC, student loans, Head Start, a whole host of things. They just don't believe that the government should be doing those things, and are fine with seeing those go away. And they understand that pain will be caused, but they believe that that's a necessary separation between the government and the people that are served that pain. And so that's why we are where we are.
Okay. Khalil, could you hear us?
Yes, I heard, and I understand, and I understand the politics of to some degree of the House members. I think the unfortunate thing is that though there are those who take some issue at WIC, and they've made some adjustments, and some of the criticisms about WIC were some years ago about emphasis on infant formula, for instance, and emphasizing infant formula for as opposed to women who are breastfeeding. And the program has made adjustments to that over time. But the point here really is that these are the most vulnerable citizens. We're talking about pregnant mothers, breastfeeding mothers, postpartum, young children, and there's just a raft of data that really attests to the efficacy of the WIC program. So for those who are talking about saving money, this is clearly an instance of saving money on the backs of low-income women. And the reality is, if those savings are realized, they're really short-term, because the long-term medical consequences of denying proper nutrition to America's children. There's other data that shows that this is really a self-defeating proposition, because you're going to end up paying more money in medical care costs, more money for medical conditions that are not treated, or medical conditions that are caused or impacted by lack of nutrition.
Khalil, thank you. Let Mary respond to that. You've been kind of shaking your head here. Imara and Khalil have painted a dire picture.
I think that especially Khalil's last comments, I think this has never been a data-driven decision set. It was, a percentage across the board. And I think that's the outrage from the American citizens and residents in our community, saying it should be data-driven. There should be thoughtful decisions made about which programs need to be cut because they're not performing, and which programs, prevention programs or services, improve outcomes and actually save dollars. And that kind of discussion and discourse has not occurred. And I think everyone, to Imara's first comment, it has passed more than one time, and I think many people anticipated that in between those times there were going to be thoughtful, data-driven discussions about where the reduction should be made and why.
So we have talked about, at least in my introduction, I said that this is something that's going to take place over the next 10 years. Imara, do you see that happening?
I mean, a couple of things. I think it's really important. This is not about public policy. This is about politics. The data set isn't important because this is an ideologically driven decision. So the fact that they're not using data and that it's not thoughtful, of course it's not, because it has nothing to do with that. It's about ideology. They don't believe that the government should be doing these things, and so they want the government to stop doing them, and so whatever it takes to make that happen is what they're concerned about. I think it's really important for people to kind of engage that there is a larger agenda at work, and that this is not about the fine points of public policy. The reason why everyone's so alarmed by it is because, as Khalil was pointing out, and Mary, it has real-world consequences. I mean, and it's hard for us to embrace the fact that people are willing to put ideology, ahead of what are people and what we would deem people's individual interests. But that's at work, and we just kind of need to accept that and kind of figure out what to do about it. I think that I don't see it changing. We've been in this tense budget standoff now. It's now going in its second year. It started right after President Obama got elected. So if you want to clock back to 2009, when no Republican, only 3 Republicans rather out of 535 members of Congress voted for the stimulus package. So from the beginning, there's been this resistance to a lot of the things that we're talking about. I don't see this battle changing unless there's a sharp confrontation in Washington. I think one of the things that's going on is that a lot of people who are actually concerned about the real-world impact of these cuts are willing to try to figure out a way to ameliorate them, to make their blow less severe while we try to figure out what else is going on. But what that means is that we end up making a series of accommodations that those do is lock in sequestration. So this is what I mean. So at every single point, President Obama didn't want to have a sharp confrontation over a lot of budget cuts. And what I mean by a sharp confrontation was calling the Republicans bluff and saying we're willing to we're willing to shut the government down, or we're willing to do something extreme, so that would be a serious leverage point in negotiations, so that the other side would take you seriously. And so what's happened on his side is that he's constantly gone through a series of accommodations, and all those things have done is lock in every single budget cut. So
now let's talk about something else that's going on. And if you go back to, and you seem to indicate that this is coming from the GOP, who wanted this to happen. So if you look at the last election and you look at how the Republican Party lost because it had alienated most of the people in this country who formed a coalition, primarily people of color from the Asian communities, from the Black communities, from the Latino communities. These are the communities that would be affected the most. So how is the Republican Party supposed to turn around by making these kind of cuts that affect the exact groups of people that it wants to bring into the party?
Well, they don't want to bring them in. There's been a massive debate. There was in the beginning of the year meeting of the Republican National Committee, where they are in warfare is too sharp of a word, but in very serious disagreement on whether or not they just need to change the look and feel of the party, so whether or not they need a slick marketing campaign or whether or not they actually need to change substantively. And so I think your premise actually is ahead of where the Republican Party is. And today in the New York Times, John Boehner said, hey, we won too. This party was reelected to the House of Representatives, albeit with a smaller majority. And so we ran on a very specific agenda, our members, and we intend to carry that out. And so I don't believe that they believe that they need to change. I think that there is an idea that at some point that needs to happen, but that's not where they are right now.